looking at, this is all limestone. It's part of a geological formation called a karst formation that runs all the way up the Shenandoah Valley. The main characteristic for this kind of rock formation is caverns. The limestone is full of minerals. It's very easy for the groundwater to dissolve those minerals and start making pathways through the rock. Picking up a grain of sand here, a grain of sand there, give or take a couple of million years, and you end up with caverns. As you go north from here, of course, there's our caverns on the property, and then there's Luray Caverns, Shenandoah Caverns, lots of little caverns in between. That's how the bridge started. The bridge started as a cavern that went all the way to the end of the trail back to the Lace Waterfall. And at some point, 250 million years ago, the creek found its way in and started carving its path down through the cavern, making it deeper and deeper and deeper. And at the same time, the surface water was working on the cavern roof, dissolving the minerals, making little paths down through the rock, until eventually the cavern roof weakened and started to collapse. It started at the far end, so as you walk down, you'll notice that everything down there is much more open than here, because that's been eroding away for a very long time. Now, here the cavern roof stood for a much longer period. So we still have the steep cavern walls going up. And if you look up across the creek there, you'll see two towers that go up. Now, those towers curve inward just a little bit at the top. But if you follow that curve, you can see how they came across and met the other side just as the bridge still does. So they were also part of the cavern roof. Okay. And the bridge is the last piece of the cavern roof. Did you all see George Washington's initials when you came under the bridge? Yes? Yeah, I think so. Well, historians will not verify that they're his because there's nothing in writing that says he was ever here at the actual bridge. But there's lots of circumstantial evidence. He was 18 at the time. And in 1750, he was 18, and there was a survey expedition that came down to take the measurements on the bridge. Now, Jefferson's father, Peter Jefferson, was one of the surveyors on that expedition. Peter Jefferson was friends with Washington's tutor at William and Mary, where he got his surveying license. And Washington had just got his license. It makes sense that the tutor would have passed him along to Peter Jefferson. So that's when we think that he was here. He's not listed as a surveyor on that expedition, but he was only 18. He was an assistant at best, and just kind of along for the ride. But Jefferson's daughter, when she sold the property, she identified it as being George Washington's initials, and she would have heard that from her grandfather. They are just down, see if people are looking across and taking pictures right now? There's a little rock incropping in the path right there. Look across and you'll see a white box, and the GW is in the box. It's on the creek side. Across the creek. Yeah, it's across the creek. So Washington was also very tall for a man at that time. He was very athletic, very strong. He got dared a lot, that you can't do this, but you can't do that. So I think that's how the initials ended up on the other side of the creek. There's also a story that someone dared him to throw a rock all the way over the National Bridge, and that he did. Now, I have been told that if you throw long from the top of the hill, it can be done, but still pretty impressive. Anyway, that's another throwing the silver dollar across the Delaware story. Okay. All right, so first thing you're going to see as you go down the path is the Monacan exhibit. The Monacans were the tribe that lived in this area. They were also the biggest tribe here in Virginia. They ranged from Charlottesville down to Roanoke and then all the way to Richmond. Bye-bye, have a good day. So the village is a recreation from a village of theirs from 1699. And it's been done using the same materials, the same techniques, most cases the same tools that the Monacans use, so it's pretty close to authentic. And there are interpreters down there in period dress. They will tell you all about how the Monacans lived. Okay. So I'm just going to give you an overview how they fit into the bigger history here at the bridge. The first settlers came down in 1730 from the Pennsylvania colony, mostly Scots-Irish and German immigrants. They were following the Native American trail that ran north-south all the way down the country. There's no record of any conflict when they came into the valley. They traded back and forth with the Monicans. But about 10 years later, the Iroquois came down from up north. Now, the Iroquois had got the idea about making money. They had taken over the fur trade, and they were out to take everybody's hunting grounds. And they came through, they were ruthless. And they pretty much decimated the Monacan tribe. So the village that you'll see down the path, by 1750, that way of life was essentially over for the Monacans. There just weren't enough left after the Iroquois came through. And they still have a homeland. They were absorbed into the frontier community here. And they still have a homeland over 20 miles east of here. There's about 2,000 on the tribal register, okay? But they are still an active tribe. So later settlers, also coming down from the Pennsylvania colony, following the same path, they were going to the newer colonies in the Carolinas and Georgia. And they stayed on the path, came right across the bridge here, and on down to Point South. There were so many of them, hauling all their worldly goods with them, that the path became known as the Great Wagon Road, and became the main corridor for all the immigrants moving south into the new colonies. So if you have any ancestors who settled in that part of the country, odds are they came right across the bridge to get there. You can't walk across, you can drive across. That's Route 11 up there. I'll get to that in a second. Did you enjoy it? Have a good day. All right, the name most associated with the bridge is Thomas Jefferson. Jefferson was first here when he was 24 years old. The bridge made a huge impression on him. Now, the great natural beauty was a big part of that, but there was something else for Jefferson. He saw the bridge as a symbolic gateway to the west. It would run directly east-west here. And so that made the bridge very important to him. And that was already one of his great passions. Of course, during his presidency, we had Louisiana Purchase and Lewis and Clark, and westward expansion began in earnest. He was already thinking westward back before the Revolution. He purchased the property from King George III 2 years before the Revolution. Turned around, wrote the Declaration of Independence, and we went to war with the king. Now, during the Revolution, Jefferson leased the property to the Army to make musket balls. Now, the way they made musket balls back in those days, every man would have his own press. That's very soft, and you could just press it into a round shape. Now, that's fine for hunting or doing whatever, but in time of war, you need lots of musket balls. Muskets were notoriously inaccurate. So what they would do is build shot towers. And the idea is that a drop of molten lead falling from a great height will round itself as it falls by centrifugal force. So here they would be up on top of the bridge. They'd be up on top of the bridge with a pan that had gauged holes so you get the right size drop going through. Just pour in the molten lead. The drops went through, rounded as they fell 200 feet down to the creek. They could come along at the end of the day and just shovel musket balls out of the creek here. So a lot of the ammunition for the Revolution was made right here under the bridge. Wow. In fact, there were still musket balls in the creek as recently as the 1970s, which is when the EPA came down and told the owner at the time, clean up the creek. We don't want lead because we're Chesapeake watershed. You know, we go into the James River just 2 miles down. So I'm still trying to figure out where all those musket balls went, who got them. I suspect they're sitting in a cupboard somewhere in the hotel. You know, it's like everybody's lost track of them by this time. In any case, so Jefferson built a cabin up on top of the hill there, about 1803, and he specifically built it with a spare room for visitors, and he kept a guest book in that room. And he told just about everybody he met, you got to see the bridge. Go down and see the bridge. You can stay at my cabin. Well, many people took him up on that. We know that Sam Houston was here, Andrew Jackson, Daniel Boone, James Monroe was here. A number of other people that we can document because they actually wrote about it in their letters to friends or in diaries. Now the guest book would have had all kinds of names in it that we would recognize. Unfortunately, the cabin got hit by lightning, burned to the ground, guest book went with it. So we lost all record of all the other visitors down to the cabin. Jefferson died very much in debt. There were a lot of factors that played into that, bad harvests and a number of other things. But one factor was his generosity to other people. A lot of people would come and ask him to co-sign loans for them. What better way to get a loan than to ask a former president to co-sign for you? And he did, and he shouldn't have, because a lot of those people defaulted, and all the debt came back on Jefferson. After his death, all his properties had to be sold: Monticello, Poplar Forest in Lynchburg, and bridge property. Purchaser of the bridge built the first small hotel here. It was called the Forest Inn, and people continued to come down and visit the bridge. Many of them have left us their names, dates, initials, all chiseled into the wall. That was the tagging tool at the time, was hammer and chisel. Beautiful lettering on a lot of those things. Did anybody see any of the initials when you walked up? Just keep an eye on the left-hand wall, and you'll see a bunch of them as you walk down. About halfway down to the initials, low down on the wall about this height, you'll see E.H. Cook and B. Woodcock, 1843. That's the first one that you'll come to. That's low on the wall about halfway under the bridge. And then they're all over the wall on the way down. There were also a lot of artists that came down here, and you can see the work that they did on the top landing of the gift shop, the stairs that come down from the gift shop. Those pictures were widely published in the middle 1800s, both in America and in Europe, in newspapers and magazines. The bridge was internationally famous in the late 1800s. Visitors coming, doing the grand tour of America, coming from Europe, would definitely come here, as well as Niagara Falls and other places of interest. During the Civil War, generals on both sides came back and forth through the valley on a number of occasions. If they possibly could, they would stop and let the soldiers come down and see the bridge. They all knew about the bridge. So that was something the generals could do for them. After the Civil War, the Great Wagon Road became known as Lee Highway, and then in 1926 it was paved and it became US Route 11. Now, people are often surprised, sometimes horrified, to find that there is in fact a road going right across the bridge. Now, in 1926, they were still driving Model T Fords. Can't do any damage in a Model T Ford. It's a very lightweight vehicle. They had no idea we would come up with 18-wheelers, tractor trailers, cement trucks, all the heavy things that we drive now, nor could they ever have imagined the volume of traffic that would come to run up and down Route 11. Route 11 was the north-south corridor for most of the last century. The bridge saw a lot of traffic up until the 1970s. That's when 81 was built in here. And finally took a lot of that heavy through traffic off the bridge. You can still drive over the bridge. It's Route 11 going south. The fence up there is the end of the hotel property. That's about the only way you'll know when you're crossing the bridge. It's heavily fenced and hedged up there. They do not want anybody getting out and walking around up there. They don't want anybody falling off, but they also don't want any rocks getting accidentally kicked over the side that land on people down below. So there's absolutely nothing to see when you drive over. But if you want to know when you're driving over, look for the fence at the end of the property there. There are a lot of locals that still don't know how to drive around the bridge. Okay, one last thing. The bridge has had about 18 owners since Jefferson's time. It's always been privately owned. This year we were purchased by the VCLF, the Virginia Conservation Legacy Foundation, for the express purpose of donating the property to the state of Virginia to become the newest of the state parks. So the wheels are turning, slowly, but they're turning. Sometime in the next few years, we will become the newest state park there. Okay? All right, does anybody have any questions?
Are the caves open to the public?
The caverns up on top? Yes, caverns are open. You drive up there, go north on 11, just 600 yards or something, and they have a road that goes up to the parking lot up at the caverns there.
Okay.
I believe their last tour is 4:30.